Hey, how you doing? This is RJ. I've been talking a lot about crowdfunded comics lately, but I also would like to talk a little bit about independent comic companies, companies that are not the big two, and I'm going to look at Alterna Comics again. And I'm going to do it in a very roundabout way. I'm going to look at two comics that came out from Alterna this week. And I just wanted to do this light video because I know these videos don't do very well. I usually only get about 20 people that watch them, but I like to keep it light a little bit, and I have a couple of videos planned that are of the deeper quality that the last few have been. So every once in a while, at least, I want to keep things a little bit light. So I'm going to do these as a comic review and as a little bit of a review of Alterna, because we really, as comic buyers, need to look into finding good alternative comic companies that we want to buy from. And for Alterna, now I haven't had the greatest selection of Alterna that I've read so far, but they seem to put their story before their politics, which is what we want. And it's what actually keeps a story going and you wanting to read it rather than throwing it into the corner. But it's not hard to see why this happens. These people who are doing these books are hungry. They're hungry and they need to be fed, and they're doing this not only because they love it, but because they need a paycheck. And so, of course, they're going to look at what will sell. And they're going to say, story comes first. Just like an editor would tell them, perhaps an editor is telling them, story comes first. Get your politics out of there if you want these things to sell. So I think that at the very least, these two books, which I picked up from Alterna this week, do that. And it's going to be up to, if things go south, if what everybody is kind of thinking is going to happen with Marvel happens, and it is basically done and over with and is canceled, the entire thing, then it's going to be up to these small independent comic companies like Alterna to actually provide variety in our comic buying, because DC is great and they actually produce some really good comics now. They've always have, but they're not exactly the greatest variety of comics. As I had said in one of my previous videos, they always retreat to their core heroes, which everybody loves, but it gets a little stale for people at times. So I'm going to go over Eric Henson's Eden first. That was one of the two comics that I'm going to go over, and the other one is Zero Jumper, number 3. Now, I've already done a review of Zero Jumper number 1 and 2, if you want to look that up. I think Zero Jumper is really good. I was hoping that Eric Henson's Eden would be a little better than it is, and I thought I was going to probably spend more time on Eden than on Zero Jumper number 3, but it doesn't look like it's going to turn out that way. It's a good book, though. And I want to say right off the bat, these two books, they certainly have room for improvement, but they are of a quality that back when Marvel and DC were really high and doing well, these would be second-tier comics at Marvel and DC. I truly believe that both of these books would be second-tier comics at Marvel and DC in the heyday. Today, they're probably better than most books that you would get from Marvel in their quality. Again, there's certain things that can be improved. I'm going to go over that, but they're really well done. I'm looking at Eden, and especially the art, because Eric Henson does both the art and the story. And I'm looking at the art for this, and it reminds me a lot of early 1990s Legion of Superheroes. It looks in that vein. It's well done, and it has a lot of otherworldly kind of feel to it. So it really is good art. But the story, and that's what the problem is, and it falls down a little bit with the story, because I don't know who Eric Henson is, and I don't know if this story has been put out in other kinds of formats. I'm just guessing, and I'm guessing here, that he probably has this out in other formats as well. I'm thinking that it's probably a novel because there's a lot of backstory to it. You open the first page, and on the inside of the cover page, it gives you a paragraph of what's going on instead of actually having a story there to tell you any of this. So I kind of get the feel that there is a backstory, that it's been published in something else other than comics, and especially because of the way that he writes. He has a lot of exposition. There is a lot of talking in this, and that's one of the things where I think it falls down a little bit. There are some scenes where you just have pure action and very little dialogue, but there was actually a point around 3/4 of the way through this book where I just stopped reading the balloons. I just stopped. And I just started skimming them because there was just too much dialogue. And I could get enough of what the story was about by actually just skimming them instead of reading the entire thing. So he doesn't exactly use his word economy in the best way. He should have more of his art tell the story and less of his words tell the story. And if he's doing both the art and the story itself, then he actually should be well in control of having those two things work together and tell the story more visually, because we got a visual medium right here in comics, and tell the story more that way. And so I think that's where it falls down, but it's not it's not a problem that breaks the story for me, in that I'm probably going to be buying the second issue. Certainly for $1.50, I'm probably going to be buying this whole 4-issue miniseries. And part of that would be because of Zero Jumper, because I thought that Zero Jumper fell down a little bit in its opening, but I'm on number 3 with that, and the story gets better, and you can see the artist. Because, again, for Zero Jumper, the artist and the storyteller, which is Patrick Mulholland, he does both of them. You can see him improving, just getting better. So that's what I'm hoping happens with Eden. But, again, the art is really, really well done. And it has a feel to it, like I said, that reminds me of old Legion of Superheroes. And I'll give you basically what the story is about. Basically, the story is that it's the year 2714 AD, and the Earth has been taken over by an alien race, and what's left of humanity after fighting a war against these aliens and losing is a small number of people, and they're trying to find a new place to live, and they have old soldiers from the war trying to basically survive amongst peoples that are dominantly, of course, not human. So that's where the story begins before you even get into the actual comic, because this is basically what it says in the front page. And then you get into the story itself, which is more one of these soldiers looking for her child. And here you have an example of, you got a female, very strong warrior, and she's, I don't know, it's hard to tell with the coloring in here, but she's certainly not white. So here you have somebody who you could say was quote unquote diverse, but it's not, it doesn't have to do anything with the story. It's just that's who she is, and it's not stuck in there for some political reason. It's just who this person is, and it's got nothing to do with interfering with the story, which is great. There's also a number of different aliens in here, which he seems to get very well into how they actually look, and is very consistent with his art. So again, I'm going to give you a little bit of the art from the inside, but I'm not going to spoil the story. But I think it's a buy. I mean, for $1.50, it's a buy. Again, I honestly think it's a little worse than better. It's not as good as I had hoped it would be, but the art pulled me through, and I think that he's probably going to get better with the story because he's establishing just a little bit, and I've read issue number 1 now, so I'm going to probably buy the entire 4-issue limited series. Why not? Again, for $1.50, why not? The other one that I'm looking at is Alterna's Zero Jumper number 3. Now, this is actually the best of the 3 to come out so far. And you probably, if you go to your comic store, you might just find Zero Jumper number 1 and 2 on the shelf still. I don't know why it's not selling very well. It doesn't seem to be selling very well at my comic store, but it's actually really good. It's really well done. The art is really well done. And Patrick Mulholland, he actually knows what he's doing with establishing both the story through the art and through the dialogue. And this gives a little bit of the backstory that answers a lot of my questions of what's going on that I had for the first 2 issues, because issue number 1 starts with the action just already in progress. I think that was the title of my video. But it's really well done. It gives a little bit of the backstory about Juno, who is the protagonist in the story. She is basically the last survivor of Earth, because if I remember correctly from issue 1 and 2, there is an intergalactic race who developed time travel and basically took over everything after that point, because they can see into the future, and they go around destroying other civilizations that are on the brink of inventing time travel in order to keep their empire secure so that no one can challenge them. And Earth was on the brink of developing this time travel technology, so they basically destroyed the planet. Destroyed everyone on the planet, at the very least. And Juno is the last survivor because her mother was the one who was developing this time travel technology and basically used it on her so that she could survive. Almost in a Superman-like way, but through time rather than through space. So, that's the story. And right in issue number 3, you have another villain basically looking to develop their own time travel technology and is trying to extract out of Juno how she is able to do this and whether or not it's actually anything to do with her or with her technology or with her history. And it's a brilliant way in order to tell the history of this character. As one of the things that I loved about this number 3 is that this is the way you do exposition. This is the way you show people a backstory. This is great. I wish there was a little bit of it in issue 1 and 2. Even a picture here or an offhand phrase there that explained it a little bit so I could actually have some of it in the first 2 issues. But this is the way that backstory is written and put into a comic. There's this thing, I'm going through the Marvel feed lately, and they're hyping up Captain Marvel number 1 because it's all about a family story of Captain Marvel, and it keeps on switching back and forth when she's having flashbacks. And it's just horrible. It's horrible. It's like the person has no idea how to write a comic. This is how it should have been done. Something like this is how it should be done. It is actually part and parcel of the story to have to go through her memories and see how she got here and who she is. And it doesn't interfere with the story. It's actually the story. And you get the exposition besides that. And it's great. I'm loving this. I think that if this goes more than 4 issues, if there's more of this Zero Jumper series after this, I'm buying it. I can tell you that right now. If something else comes out from Patrick Mulholland, I'm buying it. I'll tell you that right now as well. Now, there is one thing, actually a couple of things about both these books, Eden and Zero Jumper, that if anybody from Alterna is listening to this, I just want to go over because I love the fact that it's on newsprint and you get it for $1.50. It's great. But there are a couple of things, just a couple of minor things that I think that they could do better. One of the things that I had said to do better in Zero Jumper 1 and 2 is the way that the bubbles for thought bubbles and word bubbles were actually shown that they should have a black border, and they do have a black border in this third one, and it's great. It makes things so much easier to read. The other thing is it's the coloring. The coloring really gets me. One of the things about the coloring is that you have this Because people are used to looking at Marvel and DC comics from the last little while and seeing that the way that they do color, and they think they can mimic it still with the whole newsprint thing, I really don't think they can. You need to be a little more basic with your coloring, especially when you have your thought bubbles or your narrative, that's your words that you're putting on a background. White with a black background works. Black with a white background works. There are a couple of times in here where they have something else which works, which is white on a green background. I don't know why it works, but it works. But when you have something, there's a couple of instances where you have white on a gray background, for your words are white and your background is gray. It really doesn't pop. And if you're in any kind of low lighting, it's hard to read. Same with the white on red. It doesn't work that well. It should stick. It will probably take a little bit of experimentation to find out which works, but there are some that you probably should drop and concentrate on others. But my biggest problem with these Alterna books is the coloring itself. Now, just by chance, I picked up this book from my dollar bin this week. It's called Talos. It was published in 1987. From DC. Now, it's a Gil Kane story. And if you know anything about Gil Kane, well, I'll show you. You probably recognize the art. And the thing is that Gil Kane's art is spectacular. And it works so much better with simple coloring like they have back in the 1980s. I'm looking at the cover of this, and there is basically 5 colors that they use. That's it. There's a couple of shading areas. There's a couple of extra colors, 2 extra colors used for the title that aren't in the picture itself, but you basically have 5 colors. That's it. And when you get into the book, I'll probably give you a couple of pictures from the book as well. The coloring is just as simple, but it doesn't interfere with the art. And I think that's what the problem is with Zero Jumper and with Eden to some extent, is that your art, both, like I said at the first of this video, the art for both of these books is really good. But the coloring is interfering with their art. You can see at the first of Zero Jumper where the story starts on Earth, where she is just on, in normal background coloring, which we would recognize. And you got these simple lines for most things. And it's great. It's spectacular. Things stand out. I don't even think you need that much color as it has on the page 1 and 2, as the sky colors of white and blue. You could just have one color, but hey. But the thing is, the more simple you put it, I think the more your art is going to stand out, and people go, hey, that's really good art. Whereas I think your coloring, if you're looking at the new way of coloring, especially putting it on newsprint, it's kind of interfering with how good the art is. And it's not allowing someone to see the full beauty of the art and say to themselves, yeah, this is why I'm coming back, because of this art. And besides that, I've been following Alterna since I've gotten into some Alterna books. I've actually been following Patrick Mulholland, and one of the things that he said, it's not so much a complaint, it's more of I wish I could do more. He is lamenting the fact that he can't get his books out fast enough, just because he's doing everything. He has done the story, he is doing the art, he is doing the coloring, he's also doing the lettering as far as I know. But I think that if you make things more simplistic, these books would be better and you can get them out there even faster, especially the coloring. I don't think you need to go so in depth with the coloring. It's not actually adding to the story. It's not actually adding to the art. I think in some ways it's subtracting from the art. I think that if you did it much simpler, that you would spend a lot less time producing one book and then be able to produce more books. And as I said, I don't think that it would take away from it. I think it would actually enhance both of these books to have more simplistic, at the very least, coloring, even more simplistic art style. I think Eden would actually benefit a little bit from a more simplistic art style, just because you don't have to spend so much time with the art. But again, both of these artists are great, and I can see things improving, certainly in Zero Jumper, as I'm going from issue to issue. And one other thing, if someone from Alterna is listening, one other thing is this, that I would suggest that somebody like a new company should do for all its books. Because everybody is going to be confused at some point. Everybody is going to read a book and be confused at some point. That's just inevitable. Not everybody is going to understand what the author and what the artist is trying to do. But where everybody is confused is going to be different from me to another person to another person. All of those points are going to just be something else for each one of us. So how do you counter some of that confusion and just do it in a easily, really, really simple way and that works for everybody? Number your pages. Quite literally, all you got to do is number your pages. Put a tiny little number down in the bottom right-hand corner. And that gives everybody a cue when they have to look back and say, hey, did I miss something? And then they flip back to the page and they look at the page number and they go, no, that's page 4 and this is page 5. I didn't miss anything. So obviously, I need to think a little more about what's going on. Number your pages. I don't know why anybody doesn't. Nobody numbers their pages anymore. And the way that everybody is writing stories and doing art right now, and it's so confusing, especially you got bad stories and bad art like Marvel. I'm flipping back from page to page going, they really need to number these pages because I got no idea what's going on at some point. But if the pages were numbered, at the very least, I would know that I'm not missing something, which is great. And it's an automatic, just, you got it. No, I'm not missing something. I have to think about this just a little more. And it works for everybody. I don't know why nobody does it. No comic companies do it. I think Alterna should start numbering its pages. Anyway, so this is just a little silly review. I don't know if anybody would actually get to the end of this 20 minutes of my review of 2 Alterna comics. And how many of the 20 of you that probably clicked on this actually listening to my whole thing. But I just wanted to do this simple review of these good comics that puts the story first. Because again, just like we should be supporting our artists that are putting out books on Indiegogo or other kind of crowd-funded platforms, you should support these as well, because you're not paying $10, $20, $25 an issue for something. You're not getting a whole run for something like $25. You're getting a whole run for $1.50 an issue, which is going to cost you $6 in the end. Seriously. We should really be supporting these if they're good comics, and they're good comics. Anyway, as I always say, make comics better by reading better comics. And again, these are good comics. All right, so if you like this video, hit like, hit subscribe. Also, leave a comment. Let me know if I should do these videos at all. I would like to keep things light every once in a while, but if nobody's going to listen to them at all, then I don't know why I should do them except for my own peace of mind and trying to keep myself sane by going over some good comics. Anyways, so yeah, hit like, hit subscribe, share the link, tell people about these great comics, and go to your local store and spend $1.50. All right, I'll see you later. Bye.